What if I told you a rookie quarterback just called out his own organization without ever saying the words? Because that's exactly what went down when Shedeur Sanders, yes, Deion Sanders' son, stepped up to the mic after one of the roughest games of his young career. There was no yelling, no finger pointing, no excuses. But by the time he walked off that podium, fans, analysts, and even former players were speechless, not because of how he lost the game, but because of what he revealed about the Raiders as a franchise. This wasn't just a press conference, it was a warning shot. And the fallout? Oh, it's already started. But to understand what really happened, we need to go back to the exact moment he found out he was starting and why that one decision might have set him up to fail from the jump. No one saw it coming, not the fans, not the commentators, and from the looks of it, not even Shedeur Sanders himself. One moment, he was pacing the sideline like every other backup quarterback in the league, gear on, helmet nearby, locked in but low profile. The next, someone taps him. A message gets whispered in his ear. His eyes widen just enough to tell you everything. You're going in. Halftime, against the Baltimore Ravens, a top-ranked defense. On national television, there was no warm-up, no tailored game plan, no build-up, just boom, your number's called. Shedeur wasn't just stepping into his first real NFL game, he was stepping into a live, high-pressure scenario with everything on the line. Now, think about that for a second from a human level. Imagine being 21 years old. You've worked your whole life for this moment. You've studied film, you've grinded through training camps, you've done every rep the coaches gave you, and now your dream debut is here. Except no one bothered to actually prepare you for it. They didn't tell you you'd be starting. They didn't structure the week around your strengths. They didn't even give you first-team reps in practice. You're going out there to lead a franchise with almost no chemistry with the actual starters. But Shedeur didn't panic, and that's the first sign you're about to witness something different. Instead of looking shaken, he walked onto the field like he belonged there. Sure, the performance was rocky, that's not in question. But the moment he stepped into that huddle, a switch flipped. That internal confidence some players are just born with? Yeah, it was on full display. He didn't scream, he didn't overhype. He looked at his guys and gave them the one thing a quarterback has to give belief. That part of the story? That gets overlooked in headlines. Because football isn't just a game of stats. It's a game of moments, of environments, of whether or not the people around you trust that you're capable of carrying the weight of the team. And somehow, with everything stacked against him, he had that presence. And then, the game began and reality hit. From the very first snap, it was clear. The timing was off. Receivers weren't where they needed to be. The pocket felt rushed, and mistakes started stacking up fast. But here's the twist that makes this story different from any rookie struggle narrative you've heard before. Shedeur didn't make excuses. After the game, after the dropped snaps, the interception, the loss, he stood in front of the media, looked dead into the cameras, and said, "I didn't play good at all." No sugarcoating. No, "I wasn't ready." No throwing teammates under the bus. Just brutal, honest, unfiltered accountability. But, and this is key, what he said next is what flipped the football world upside down. Very subtly, very calmly, Shedeur revealed that he hadn't practiced all week with Jerry or the other first-team receivers. Let that sink in. The man was sent into live NFL action with guys he hadn't been timing with, hadn't built chemistry with, hadn't built rhythm with. In a league where milliseconds separate touchdowns from turnovers, that lack of coordination isn't a small detail, it's a guaranteed failure setup. And suddenly, fans weren't just analyzing the passes. They were asking the bigger question. What is the Raiders coaching staff doing? Because it's one thing for a rookie to make mistakes, that's expected. But it's another thing entirely to undercut his chances before the game even starts. This was no longer about stats. It wasn't just about reads, footwork, or pocket awareness. This was about organizational failure. A team gave their future quarterback a live bullet scenario and didn't even load his gun properly. And Shedeur? Standing in the fire, taking heat that wasn't his to take, handled it with more maturity than some veterans. That moment right there at halftime is where the story split. It stopped being just another game. That was the moment everything changed. Because while Sanders didn't lash out or point fingers, he said just enough to let the world know the problems go way deeper than one rookie performance. The game was over. The final whistle had blown. The score wasn't pretty, the fans were frustrated, and analysts were already slicing up the performance like it was the day after Thanksgiving. But the story? The real story hadn't even started yet. Because when Shedeur Sanders walked into that post-game press conference, the entire NFL world leaned in waiting to hear excuses, waiting to hear confusion, waiting to hear a young quarterback scramble to explain how a game slipped through his fingers. But that's not what they got. Instead, they got one of the most controlled detonations of truth the league has seen all season, disguised as a respectful interview. Shadeur opened the convo with class. He thanked God for the opportunity. He showed respect to his teammates. He gave credit to the Ravens. Every box checked, right? But then, with just a few simple lines, he flipped the mood entirely. He dropped truth grenades so casually, the media almost didn't catch it at first. There are a lot of things we've got to look at this week. I wasn't comfortable with some of the routes. Jerry and I need reps. That was it. That was the moment. The mask slipped not emotionally, but operationally. He didn't blame anyone, didn't rant, didn't call out coaches by name. But those carefully worded answers, they told us everything. Because when a quarterback says he's not comfortable throwing to his WR1, that's not just a comment, that's a problem. And it wasn't lost on anyone watching. The entire vibe online shifted within minutes. Analysts pulled the quotes. Fans ran with their own theories. Former players started chiming in. Why wasn't he repping with the ones? How are you setting up a rookie to succeed like this? This explains everything. Suddenly, this wasn't just about Shadeur's performance, it was about what Shedeur unintentionally revealed. Because let's be honest, a lot of NFL pressers are filler. Cliches, empty words. One game at a time. Gotta watch the film. You've heard it all before, but this was different. Because he exposed the cracks in the Raiders' foundation without even raising his voice. That comment about needing more time with Jerry Jeudy, that single sentence sparked a firestorm, because it implied, clearly, that he hadn't gotten that time. And when you're a high-round pick, handpicked by the regime and seen as the future face of the franchise, that shouldn't be happening. What made it even more riveting? The way he said it. Cool. Measured, composed. He didn't show frustration. He showed focus. As if he knew this wasn't the last time he'd be speaking on a podium. As if he knew this chapter was just beginning. But he wasn't done pulling back the curtain. Another reporter asked if he felt things would have been different with more preparation. First-team reps, better game flow, plays designed specifically for him. Most rookies? They'd shrug. Or toss coaches under the bus. Shedeur? He shut it down with a smile. That's not my place. I'm just asking for opportunity. The rest is out of my hands. Boom. No blame. No bitterness. Just honesty. With a side of heartbreaking realism. Because beneath the calm delivery, you could hear the frustration of being talented, ready, hungry, and ignored. And that's why this press conference hit harder than the stat sheet ever could. It wasn't about numbers. It was about organization. About decisions made during the week, about reps with backups instead of starters, about the invisible disadvantages, no camera catches during practice. And still, Shedeur took all the responsibility. I didn't meet my own expectations. I have to be better. I'm gonna wear this one. He didn't just face the pressure, he absorbed it. And in doing that, he protected the very people who probably let him down the most. That level of poise, that level of self-sacrifice, that's not just leadership. That's franchise quarterback behavior. But the real irony? In protecting the team, in shielding his coaches, in owning every misstep, he ended up revealing more than he intended. And that's why this post-game press conference has gone viral. Not because of what he shouted, but because of what he let slip. But this wasn't just about words. The conversation around Shedeur Sanders exploded because what he described without directly saying it was a setup that no NFL quarterback should ever have to walk into. And it all comes down to one critical flaw inside the Raiders system. Let's get one thing straight. This isn't just a rookie struggle story anymore. This is a deeper conversation. One about how a billion-dollar NFL franchise, fully staffed, fully resourced, fully aware of who their backup quarterback was, somehow didn't give him the basic tools necessary to succeed. Let's talk about the reps, because that's where this entire situation falls apart. If you're not deeply into football mechanics, you might have missed it. But quarterbacks live and die by timing, by rhythm, trust, anticipation. Every route a receiver runs is slightly different depending on the player. The way Jerry Jeudy rounds off his breaks isn't the same as a practice squad guy. The body language, foot speed, shoulder positioning, it all matters. And if your quarterback hasn't practiced those routes with the guys he's expected to throw to in-game, you're sending him into battle blind. That's exactly what happened with Shedeur Sanders. And he told us in his own words that all week long, he was throwing timing routes to the backups. The scout team. The hungry dogs, as he calls them. So when the moment came asterisk, when the lights were on, when the defense was elite, when everything was moving a million miles an hour, asterisk, Shedeur had to process NFL speed while also trying to build live chemistry on the fly? That's not just tough. That's sabotage. And let's be honest, it could have been prevented. Every week in the NFL, smart teams prepare their backups. Injuries happen all the time. One hit, one awkward ankle roll. And suddenly, your number 2 becomes QB1. The elite programs teams like the Chiefs, the Eagles, the 49ers, they don't gamble on maybe. They integrate their backups into the weekly reps. They make sure those guys have at least some exposure to first-team looks, especially if you've invested in them long-term. But the Raiders? They left their potential franchise quarterback working with players who aren't even active on game day. And then they sent him in against a top-5 defense with zero live game chemistry and a generic game plan built for someone else. That's the part that really stings. Because let's not forget, Shedeur isn't some undrafted nobody. He's not some journeyman you pulled off the street. He's a high-profile rookie, a former Heisman candidate, the son of one of the greatest football players of all time. He was brought in with hype, vision, and a belief that this team was grooming its future. But where was the grooming? Where was the development? The infrastructure? The prep? The truth is brutal but simple. They knew there was a gap, they just didn't fix it. Head coach Kevin Sansky admitted there were chemistry issues, yet somehow, nothing about the practice plan was adjusted to get Shedeur more first-team reps throughout the week. And that part? That's where fans started to lose their minds. Because now the narrative wasn't just about Shedeur not being ready. It was about the coaching staff knowing he wasn't ready and throwing him in anyway. Whether it was arrogance or negligence, it doesn't matter. The result was the same. A young quarterback was tossed into a storm with no umbrella and no lifeboat. And here's why that's such a massive problem. The NFL isn't a place where you get 10 chances. It's a place where careers are built or buried in moments. If you mishandle your QB development, it doesn't just hurt that player. It can set your entire franchise years behind. Think of the Jets with Zach Wilson, the Browns with Johnny Manziel, the Bears with Mitch Trubisky. Wrong environment kills potential. And right now, people are starting to ask the hard question. Is Shedeur Sanders the problem? Or is the Raiders franchise quietly breaking something that could have been special? Because for all the criticism, all the game film, and all the takes, nobody can deny the failure started before Shedeur ever took the field. This wasn't just poor execution. It was poor planning, poor allocation, poor development. And maybe the worst part? Shedeur tried to protect them anyway. He still gave praise. He still showed composure. But the facts? They're written all over the tape. The timeline, the system. He was set up to fail. And he almost made it work anyway. But what truly shocked people wasn't how he played or what the coaches did. Asterisk. It was how Shedeur handled the scrutiny, the spotlight, and the locker room politics asterisk with a level of maturity that felt way beyond his years. Let's get into the part nobody saw coming. His emotional intelligence might be the most powerful weapon he has. In a world where most rookie quarterbacks struggle just to remember the snap count, Shedeur Sanders is already playing a deeper game. One that goes far beyond reading coverages or shifting protections. He's reading the room, he's managing the media, he's protecting the locker room culture. And that's what left so many people speechless after the press conference. Because it wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it, why he said it, and who he was looking out for when he did. Let's rewind. A reporter asked about the energy in the stadium, the vibe when Shedeur entered the game, the fact that fans were visibly cheering louder when he stepped on the field than they had all game. Most guys? They'd smile, maybe soak in the glory. Say something like, "I appreciated the love. The city's behind me. I'm here to take over." But not Shedeur. He went the other way. He said he was grateful for the number 12 jerseys, for the support, for the energy, but then he flipped the narrative on its head with one powerful line. But when the fans cheer for me while Dylan's still our quarterback, that's tough on him. That doesn't help the team. Wait, what? Most guys his age, heck, most NFL quarterbacks in their prime would take that opening and run with it. Half would tweet something cryptic, half would play into the crowd love. But Shedeur, he shot down the noise. Why? Because he understands the gravity of his presence. He knows that when the backup QB becomes the fan favorite, the locker room starts to crack. Morale dips, tension rises, leadership becomes cloudy. And he doesn't want that. He doesn't want to be the reason his teammate loses confidence. He doesn't want division starting with the fans and leaking into the locker room. That's leadership on a level most veterans haven't even mastered. You can't teach that. As controversial as the game situation was, you couldn't help but notice how data-driven and emotionally intelligent his entire approach was. Every time he was asked a baited question, one that tried to get him to blame someone, hint at coaching mistakes, or stir up drama, he sidestepped it like a 12-year vet who had media training since birth. But instead of dodging responsibility, he did the opposite. He absorbed it. This one's on me. I'm the quarterback, win or lose. It goes through me. I didn't do enough to help us win. And here's where it goes even deeper. Shedeur knows he's not the villain in this story. He knows the coaches didn't set him up to thrive. He knows the game plan didn't fit his style. He knows the reps weren't there. But instead of outing anyone or lashing out in frustration, he chose to keep the team united. And you can tell it wasn't political. It was personal. It came from a place of belief in something bigger than himself. Because leaders aren't just measured by how they perform under pressure, they're measured by how they carry the pressure of others. And that day, with cameras rolling, critics circling, and social media exploding, Shedeur carried weight he didn't even create. Most rookies focus on mechanics, arm strength, footwork, blitz reads. Shedeur's out here managing team chemistry, public perception, and future leadership optics in one press conference. And it's not about being perfect, it's about being intentional. In an era of me-first players, highlight reels, and ego-fueled rivalries, he chose humility. In a moment where he could have blamed the system, he protected it. And in doing that, he showed exactly why so many people, even those inside the building, believe he's already operating like a face of the franchise talent. He didn't just lose with grace. He led through loss. And people noticed. Former players started posting about his presence. Athletes from other leagues praised his poise. Fans, several of whom were initially skeptical, started saying what many were thinking. If that's the kind of person he is after a loss, imagine what he'll sound like after a win. And there it is. That's the power of emotional intelligence. It doesn't show up on the stat sheet, but it shows up when everything else falls apart. Everyone's seen the replay by now. That interception. The throw that had fans shaking their heads, critics firing off tweets, and commentators calling it a rookie mistake. But here's the truth nobody's talking about. That pick? It wasn't just a bad decision. It was the logical outcome of something so much bigger. Because what Shedeur Sanders did in his postgame breakdown of that play wasn't defensive, it was surgical. He didn't avoid the topic, didn't shift blame, didn't call it a fluke. He broke it down like a quarterback who's been reading defenses since middle school. And what he revealed says way more about the Raiders' system than it does about his execution. Here's how he explained it. I saw the defender's hips turn. I thought I had the window. I made the throw. That line? That tells you everything. Shedeur saw what quarterbacks are trained to see. He read the defensive back like the playbook says. When a DB's hips open away from the receiver, the throwing window is supposed to be there. That's textbook stuff. But here's where it falls apart. The issue wasn't the read. It was the timing with the wideout, because Shedeur didn't have enough chemistry with that receiver to truly know how fast the route would develop. He didn't know when the receiver would begin his break, how tight the cut would be, or whether that player tends to flatten routes or fade them slightly inside. And at the NFL level, those microscopic differences separate highlight throws from drive-killing picks. So let's pause here because this is key. We're not talking about a mechanical error, a panicked throw, or a misread. We're talking about a quarterback operating based on logical processing, but being let down by variables that could have been fixed with one thing: reps. If that route is run by one of the hungry dogs, his scout team guys the throw might have landed perfectly because he knows how they execute. He's repped those plays with them again and again. But in the biggest moment of his football career, he was throwing to first-team guys he'd barely shared the field with during the week. And let's be honest, this goes way beyond one bad throw. NFL football is played at warp speed. The average time to throw? Just over 2.5 seconds. Every adjustment, every decision, every mental calculation is happening in real time at a level 99% of people watching will never understand. And in those moments, a QB isn't thinking he's reacting. And to react with precision, you need trust in your receiver's tendencies. The fact that Shedeur openly admitted, "I like knowing every detail about the guys I'm throwing to, what they're good at, what they're not," it tells you how his mind works. He's a processor, a calculator. But how do you calculate timing when no one gave you data to work with? Let's put it plainly. This wasn't a rookie mistake. This was an organizational mistake. They didn't prep their second-string quarterback to function with the first unit. They expected him to adapt in real time, mid-game, against pro-level defenders with chemistry that hadn't been built. And when that pick happened, everyone pointed to the quarterback. Because that's what fans do. But the people who really understand the game saw it immediately. They said, "That's not on him. That's on whoever thought he could thrive without rhythm or reps." And again, Shedeur didn't run from it. He owned it. Completely. He didn't complain. He didn't talk about practice allocation. He just broke down the play with a level of accountability and insight that NFL teams pay millions of dollars to develop. And here he is, doing it off one game. That's the sign of someone who gets it. Someone who's not just learning the NFL, he's decoding it. The interception will be what casual fans remember. What football minds will remember is how he explained himself. Poised, self-aware, completely transparent. And just like that interception, that kind of response doesn't come out of nowhere. It's built on experience, character, and a hunger to get it right the next time. At this point, the debate isn't about one throw. It's not even about one game. It's about this. Is Shedeur Sanders being expected to live up to NFL-level standards without being given NFL-level preparation? Or is this just what comes with the job? Because after that Ravens game, two narratives exploded online, both loud, both emotional, and both completely opposed. On one side, you had the fans screaming, "He's the guy. The coaches failed him, not the other way around." And on the other, "Don't crown him yet. He had the opportunity and didn't deliver." But the truth, as always, lives somewhere in the uncomfortable middle. So let's break this wide open. It's a fact that Shedeur didn't look perfect. There were missed opportunities. There were hesitations. There were plays that slipped away. But here's where things get real. Was it really fair to expect a sharp, controlled performance from a quarterback who went through the entire week of practice essentially as a scout team arm? Because this isn't college anymore. This is the NFL. This is a league where backup quarterbacks aren't just next in line. They're strategic assets, contingency options, sometimes even the future of the franchise. Injury? It happens every week. QB switch? Not uncommon. So what do elite NFL organizations do? They invest in their backups. They make sure that even if the starter goes down mid-game, the guy stepping in has chemistry with the starters, rhythm with the first-team unit, familiarity with the playbook, and reps with real speed. And let's be clear, we're not talking about 50 over 50 practice reps. Nobody expects Shedeur to be getting equal time as the starter. But no time? No rhythm-building sessions? No dedicated brush-ups with the main targets of the offense? That's not caution, that's negligence. And the coaching staff? They knew this was a concern. Kevin Sansky himself acknowledged it in post-game interviews. He admitted chemistry was off. He said they needed more timing work. He even mentioned implementing those extra 100 periods in practice to help Shedeur process concepts better. Sounds great. On paper. But according to Shedeur, those periods weren't run with the starters. So what are we really talking about here? We're talking about window dressing, empty reps, conceptual understanding, without muscle memory. And in the NFL, that's the difference between taking a sack and delivering a back-shoulder dart. So yes, Shedeur may have underdelivered, statistically. Yes, there are throws he wants back. Yes, your backup QB needs to be ready when the moment comes. But read that again slowly. Needs to be ready. Not magically prepared. Not expected to improvise his way out of systemic oversight. And let's be honest, this isn't just about Shedeur anymore. It's about what this situation says about the entire Raiders organization. We've seen this story before. A promising young quarterback gets tossed into the fire without backup. The game plan doesn't match his style. He doesn't get real reps. Everyone says he's not ready. And just like that, a talent turns into a cautionary tale. It happened in New York. It happened in Cleveland. And right now, it feels like it's happening in Vegas. And here's what makes it worse. This wasn't a sixth-round flyer. This isn't some clipboard holder. This is Shedeur Sanders, a projected starter, a long-term investment, the son of a Hall of Fame football mind. This was supposed to be the future, but futures aren't built on hope. They're built on structure, on routine, on practice, reps that mirror the game reps. And that's the piece the Raiders fumbled. One fan online put it perfectly. Y'all judged the book, but didn't give it a cover. Shadeur was evaluated under expectations built for a system he wasn't even allowed to operate within. And somehow, through all that, he still kept his composure, still owned up, still left you feeling like this story was just getting started. You can feel it brewing. On every football forum, in every group chat, and deep down in the minds of Raiders fans across the country, there's a question no one wants to answer. Did we just witness the moment our franchise failed its future? Because let's strip away all the noise. Forget the stats. Forget the missed throw. Forget the press conference breakdowns. Just ask yourself this. What exactly did the Raiders expect from Shedeur Sanders when they gave him none of the tools to succeed? Seriously, what was the plan? They threw him into a live NFL game against one of the most aggressive, complex, Pro Bowl-loaded defenses in the league without chemistry with starters, game speed reps during the week, a tailored game plan, or even live contact since college, and still expected a highlight reel? Let's call it what it is. That wasn't a test, that was a setup. And now here we are watching a war break out inside Raiders Nation, a full-blown civil war of opinions, projections, and hot takes. One side says, he had his shot, he didn't deliver. If you want to be QB1, you have to be ready no matter what. There's some truth to that. The NFL waits for no one. It's ruthless, it's cold, it chews up young quarterbacks like sunflower seeds. But here's the other side, the one gaining steam, going viral, being whispered behind closed doors in locker rooms and media booths. The coaching staff completely failed this kid, and now they're hiding behind his accountability. And the receipts? They're piling up. Because Kevin Sansky, the same coach whose offense stalled all game, admitted the chemistry wasn't there, admitted adjustments should have come earlier, admitted they ran reps with different body types during the week. Different body types isn't just football language, it's a euphemism. Translation: Shedeur practiced with guys who weren't even dressing on Sunday. You don't prep a Porsche with lawnmower parts. You don't throw your number 2 quarterback into QB1 duties without giving him QB1 treatment, at least in practice. But that's what happened. And now, Shedeur Sanders is the one holding the weight. So yeah, some of the criticism he's getting is deserved. There were slow reads, there were missed throws, no one's saying he's beyond critique. But tell us who's holding the clipboard on the sidelines responsible? Who's calling out the game plan that didn't match his strengths? Who's questioning why your backup QB should need a miracle just to keep his head above water? Not a single person. Because Shedeur isn't just absorbing blame, he's covering for the people who should be right next to him at that press conference. That's the real controversy. Not the interception. Not the missed opportunity. But the fact that Raiders leadership expected magic, gave him nothing, and then quietly stepped aside while the storm came crashing down on his shoulders. And here's what makes this bigger than Vegas. Right now, across the league, this happens all the time. Promising young quarterbacks with upside, hunger, and raw tools are being put in broken environments and expected to figure it out while blindfolded. They get one chance, fail, and never see the field again. Fans wonder why developmental QBs don't develop. Teams wonder why their backups aren't NFL ready. Here's your answer. You don't become NFL ready through hope. You become NFL ready through reps, rhythm, and real investment. It's not just about who's ready when their number's called. It's about who's prepared when it matters. And the elite teams? They understand this. Kansas City, Philadelphia, San Fran. They bake development into the infrastructure. They don't wait until disaster strikes, they prepare for it. The Raiders? They gambled with their future. And when it didn't instantly hit, they watched the story shift all onto the shoulders of a rookie who deserved better. But let's be very clear here. This story isn't over. Because if there's one thing nobody can question anymore, it's this. Shedeur Sanders belongs. He has the presence, the confidence, the accountability. And under a system that's built to elevate, not complicate, he's not just going to survive. He could become the quarterback the Raiders have been chasing for decades. They say the NFL is a results business. No patience, no excuses, no time for development. But what if the result was the awakening of something bigger? Because buried beneath all the coverage of missed throws, poor game planning, and mismanaged reps was one moment. Just one line. One guarante. This will never happen again. That's what Shedeur Sanders told reporters after the loss. And he didn't shout it. He didn't say it with fire or frustration. He said it like a man who had made a mental note. Like a competitor who had just joined the NFL's toughest fraternity and took his initiation personally. That line hit different. Not because it was cocky, not because it was defensive, but because you could hear the decision in his voice. Not hope, not I'll try, not we'll see. A decision that this moment, this embarrassment, this lack of chemistry and preparation, it would not happen again. Let's be honest, Shedeur isn't the first rookie quarterback to get thrown into a bad situation. He's not the first to struggle in his NFL debut. He's not even the first to be failed by a franchise spinning its wheels in confusion and mid-tier management. But what separates this moment is what comes next. Because while others fade away, Shedeur is already building the blueprint to come back stronger. He said it himself, repeatedly, that it's about relationships, that it's about resuming rhythm, that it's about outworking preparation gaps with undeniable effort. He reflected on how well he clicked with the hungry dogs, his scout team guys, because they had reps together, muscle memory, a shared language on the field. And now, he's determined to create that same bond with the actual starting unit, starting with his top receivers, the athletes he could barely sync up with in week 1. He's hunting connection. That chemistry won't be left to chance again. He's going to create it before the coaches do, because at this point, he's not waiting to be given preparation. He's taking it. He's staying late, studying ahead, locking in at a level most rookies don't even know exists. You could feel it in the way he spoke. I need to know how every guy gets in and out of breaks. I want to know their strengths, their habits, the things they lean into during tight coverage, because I want to play with conviction. That's not rookie talk. That's quarterback uno mentality. And the part that really stunned people, even after being embarrassingly underprepared, even after being blamed by a national audience, even after watching the coaches wash their hands of the outcome, Shadeur's confidence never wavered. He said, "I still believe I'm him. I'll never go anywhere." And when someone asked if the job felt too big or too fast, he smiled and said, "The only way to go is up." That's belief. Not performance belief, identity belief. The kind that separates flash-in-the-pan rookies from long-term legends. Because when you strip away the media talk, the online noise, and the post-game highlights, football isn't just about throwing touchdowns. It's about survival. Who survives after getting blindsided by a bad system? Who survives being thrust into a game plan they didn't help build? Who survives the pressure, the criticism, the early failures? More importantly, who takes all that, embraces it, and uses it as fuel? Shedeur Sanders does. That's who. This wasn't his arriving moment. It wasn't his breakout game. But what it was foundational. It showed that even under the worst possible circumstances, he showed up, accountable, mentally locked in, vision-focused, unshaken. And when this kid does get his moment with full preparation, real chemistry, and systems that play to his strengths, he's going to be terrifying. Not because he's the most athletic QB in the league. Not because he has the biggest arm, but because he learned everything you're not supposed to learn this early: politics, development gaps, how unfair the process can be, and refused to make excuses. This wasn't the highlight reel debut people hoped for. But if you ask the right people, coaches, locker rooms, veterans, they'll tell you. This is exactly the kind of beginning NFL greatness usually starts from. Right now, the Raiders don't just have a quarterback controversy. They have a full-blown identity crisis. What we're watching isn't just a football debate. It's a philosophical war being fought in podcast comments, Reddit threads, and Monday morning talk shows. Because depending on who you ask, Shedeur Sanders is either a raw, unprepared rookie who wasn't ready, or A generational talent being slowly crushed by a system that doesn't know how to develop quarterbacks. And here's the part nobody on the coaching staff wants to admit. Both can be true. Yes, he missed throws. He held the ball too long in spots. He looked like a rookie. But also, yes, he was sabotaged by a practice structure that gave him zero timing with his future receivers. Yes, he was thrown into the fire without oxygen and asked to breathe. And now? Both narratives are ripping the Raiders fan base in half. On one side, the old school crowd. The next man up, folks. The traditionalists who believe you earn your reps with results, not promise. If you're a pro QB, you should be ready no matter what. On the other side, the new wave. The process over panic crowd. Fans who've watched too many promising talents fade because a broken system asked for results it never prepared them for. The Raiders didn't prepare him. This is accountability for them, not him. And through the middle, complete organizational silence. No follow-up statement from Sansky explaining how first-team reps will change moving forward. No clear action plan to integrate Shedeur more deeply into game preparation. No transparent timeline for development. Just silence. And tape for the world to dissect. And guess who's still taking all the blame? Shadeur Sanders. But here's the part that should really scare the front office. He's not discouraged, he's locked in. He's watching, he's listening. He's learning faster than they expected. And while the organization stays quiet, he's already building the next step. The relationships, the rhythm, the mental edge. Which brings us to the raunchiest truth in this entire saga. If the Raiders don't fix this system, not the playbook, not the quarterback, but the way they develop quarterbacks, they won't just lose games. They'll lose him, a mind like his, a motor like his, that level of emotional awareness at 22. If Shedeur Sanders fails in Vegas, it won't stay on him. The league is listening. Players are watching. Agents are already circling this story like vultures, because what we're seeing unfold is a scenario every young quarterback fears, being drafted into dysfunction and being expected to wear the consequences of someone else's chaos. And we've seen how this story ends before. Talented quarterbacks lost on the wrong teams. Coaching staffs moved on within 2 years, chased by the same ghosts. Front offices changed frontmen, but never changed structure. So here's the bottom line, and it's not up for debate. The Raiders have something special in Shedeur Sanders. He's mentally tough, emotionally intelligent, hyper-competitive, and thrown into the fire he didn't flinch. The question now isn't if he'll succeed, it's whether the Raiders will create an environment where he can, because if they don't, someone else will. And by the time that happens, it might be too late. So now the question goes to you, the fans, because this isn't about just one game anymore. This is about what kind of franchise the Raiders want to be. Do you think Shadeur should have done more with what he had? Or did Vegas completely drop the ball with one of its most valuable prospects? Let's hear your hottest take raw and unfiltered. Is this coaching staff sabotaging its future, or is this just the pain of building something special the hard way? Sound off in the comments. We're going to be tracking this story all season long. Smash that like button if you believe the truth needs to be told. Subscribe and turn on notifications because the Shedeur Sanders story is just getting started, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Until then, keep your eyes forward, keep the receipts saved, and remember, sometimes the most defining chapters aren't written in victory. They're written in what you survive.